There's something strange that happens right before two people who are meant to matter to each other finally meet. And no, it's usually not romantic. It's not fireworks. It's not a movie scene. In fact, if you're watching this alone tonight, there's a good chance you're living through it right now without realizing it. Because before a meaningful connection enters a man's life, something often starts falling apart. A routine, a certainty, an identity, a version of himself he thought he would be forever. And if that sentence hit a little too close to home, stay with me. And while you're here, if conversations like this make you feel a little less alone in your own head, consider subscribing. Not because I need another number on a screen, but because some messages seem to arrive exactly when they're supposed to. Let me tell you something I've noticed after years of listening to people talk about love, relationships, heartbreak, and the moments that changed them. The stories are always different. Different cities, different ages, different circumstances. But there is one pattern that appears again and again. Before two souls finally cross paths, life becomes strangely uncomfortable. You wake up feeling restless. Things that used to satisfy you don't quite work anymore. You go out with friends and somehow feel more alone. You achieve something you've wanted for years, and the excitement fades faster than it should. And because you're logical, you try to explain it away. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're overthinking. But deep down, there's another feeling, a quieter one. The feeling that you're standing in a room that no longer fits you. Most men don't talk about this part. They talk about meeting someone, they talk about attraction, they talk about chemistry, but they rarely talk about who they were becoming before it happened. Because meaningful connections don't just enter your life. They arrive when your current emotional landscape can no longer hold the person you're becoming. Think about that for a second. Sometimes what feels like loneliness isn't loneliness. Sometimes it's transition. Sometimes it's your mind recognizing that the chapter you're in has reached its limit before your conscious mind catches up. And that can feel unsettling, especially for men. Because men are often taught to solve problems, fix things, push forward, control outcomes. But certain experiences cannot be controlled. They can only be recognized. You know what's fascinating? Many men tell themselves they're searching for a person. But when I listen closely, they're actually searching for a feeling. The feeling of finally being seen. Not admired, not validated, not desired, seen. There is a difference, a huge one. Admiration feels good, attention feels exciting, desire feels powerful. But being truly seen, that changes something much deeper, because every man carries parts of himself he rarely reveals. The disappointments, the fears, the dreams that survive despite every reason they should have died. The private battles nobody claps for. And somewhere inside, whether he admits it or not, he wonders, if someone saw all of that, would they still stay? Most never ask that question out loud, but it lives there, quietly, year after year. And here's where the first sign appears. Before two souls are meant to meet, both people often become increasingly aware of what is missing. Not because life is punishing them, not because the universe is teasing them, but because awareness always comes before change. You start noticing empty spaces you once ignored, conversations that leave you drained, connections that feel one-dimensional, relationships where you're physically present but emotionally absent. And suddenly, what used to be enough isn't enough anymore. That discomfort is important, because if your life felt perfectly complete exactly as it was, you would never create room for someone new. And that room, that uncomfortable, uncertain, restless space, is often where the story begins. The second thing that often happens is much harder to recognize while you're living through it, because it doesn't feel magical. It feels frustrating, sometimes even unfair. People start disappearing, not dramatically, not with some explosive argument or betrayal, just quietly. A friendship becomes distant. A relationship loses its energy. Someone who once felt important slowly fades into the background of your life. And at first you resist it. Of course you do. Most men do. Because when something familiar starts slipping away, the instinct is to hold on tighter, to send another message, to make another effort, to convince yourself that if you just try harder, everything can stay exactly the same. But life has an interesting way of exposing connections that were built for a season rather than a lifetime. I've watched countless men blame themselves for these transitions. They assume they've become difficult. They assume they're failing somehow. They assume something must be wrong with them. But often neither person is doing anything wrong. They're simply growing in different directions. And growth can be painful when it forces you to acknowledge that familiarity and compatibility are not the same thing. That's a difficult truth, because familiarity feels safe. You know the conversations, you know the routines, you know what version of yourself to bring into the room. Compatibility, however, is something deeper. Compatibility allows growth. It creates expansion. It invites honesty. And sometimes, before an important person enters your life, you're gradually separated from connections that no longer allow those things. Not as punishment, as preparation. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a man sitting at dinner with people he's known for years. Everyone is talking, everyone is laughing, everything appears normal. Yet he feels strangely disconnected. Not because he dislikes them, not because they've hurt him, but because something inside him has changed. The jokes don't land the same. The conversations feel repetitive. He finds himself staring into the distance for brief moments, wondering why he feels alone in a room full of people. That experience is more common than you think, and it's one of the loneliest emotional experiences a person can have, because from the outside, nothing appears wrong, but internally, everything feels different. What's really happening in moments like these? Psychologically, you're becoming aware of an emotional mismatch that was always there. You just couldn't see it before. Awareness changes everything. Once you notice something, you can't return to not noticing it. And that's where many men become uncomfortable, because awareness creates a choice: continue pretending or acknowledge the truth. The truth might be that you've outgrown certain dynamics. The truth might be that you've been shrinking parts of yourself to maintain certain relationships. The truth might be that you've spent years being understood only on the surface, and surface-level understanding eventually becomes exhausting, especially for a man who is evolving. Here's what fascinates me most. Right before meaningful connections arrive, people often experience a period where they feel more misunderstood than ever, almost as if life is increasing the contrast. The emotional distance becomes more obvious. The missing pieces become more visible. The hunger for genuine connection becomes impossible to ignore. And that hunger isn't weakness, it's information. It's your emotional world telling you that you've reached the limits of what your current environment can provide. You begin craving conversations that go deeper. You begin noticing authenticity more than appearance. You become less impressed by charm and more interested in substance. Without realizing it, your standards change. Not your standards for beauty, not your standards for status, your standards for emotional truth. And once that shift happens, you start recognizing people differently. The qualities that once attracted you lose some of their power. The qualities that truly matter start becoming visible. That's when something remarkable begins. Because when two souls are moving toward each other, both are often learning how to stop settling for what merely distracts them. They're becoming capable of recognizing what genuinely nourishes them. And that process almost always requires letting go of something first, even when letting go hurts. And then comes the part almost nobody talks about: the silence. Not the silence around you, the silence inside you. A strange shift begins to happen. You stop chasing quite so much. You stop forcing conversations that clearly aren't flowing. You stop trying to convince people to understand things they have no interest in understanding. At first, this can feel like giving up, but it isn't. It's something very different. It's exhaustion meeting clarity. For years, many men live in a state of pursuit, pursuing success, pursuing approval, pursuing attention, pursuing someone who keeps sending mixed signals, pursuing some future version of themselves that always seems one achievement away. And eventually, whether they realize it or not, the constant pursuit starts creating noise. So much noise that they can no longer hear themselves think. Then one day, something shifts. Maybe it's after a heartbreak, maybe it's after disappointment, maybe it's after realizing that no matter how much effort you invest into certain people, the outcome never changes. You become quieter, more observant, less reactive. And from the outside, it doesn't look significant, but psychologically, it's enormous. Because when the noise decreases, awareness increases. You start noticing things you missed before. The way someone speaks when they're being genuine. The way another person avoids vulnerability entirely. The difference between chemistry and compatibility. The difference between excitement and peace. Most people don't learn that distinction until they've confused the two several times. Excitement is powerful. It creates adrenaline, uncertainty, anticipation. The emotional highs and lows that can feel addictive. Peace is different. Peace often arrives quietly. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't create chaos. It simply feels right. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Many men have spent so much time adapting to emotional turbulence that peace initially feels unfamiliar, sometimes even boring. That's how deeply old patterns can shape attraction. You can become so accustomed to unpredictability that consistency feels suspicious, so accustomed to emotional distance that openness feels strange, so accustomed to earning affection that mutual connection feels almost unreal. And before a truly meaningful person enters your life, life often starts exposing these patterns. Not to shame you, to free you. I remember a man once describing this experience in a way I've never forgotten. He said, "I stopped looking for someone, and suddenly I started seeing myself." What an extraordinary sentence, because that's often what happens. The focus begins shifting inward. Not in a selfish way, in an honest way. You begin asking questions you've avoided for years. What am I actually looking for? Why do certain relationships keep ending the same way? Why am I attracted to people who make me feel uncertain? Why do I feel uncomfortable when someone genuinely cares about me? These questions aren't easy. In fact, they're often painful, because the answers rarely point outward. They point inward, toward fears, toward beliefs, toward wounds you've learned to live around instead of heal. And this is where the third sign reveals itself. Before two souls are meant to meet, both people are often confronted with themselves. Not the polished version, not the version shown on social media, not the version presented during first impressions. The real version, the one who still has unanswered questions, the one who carries regret, the one who sometimes feels strong and lost at the same time. And strangely enough, this confrontation creates readiness. Not perfection, readiness. Those are not the same thing. You do not become worthy of meaningful love by becoming flawless. You become ready for it by becoming honest. Honest about who you are, honest about what you need, honest about what no longer belongs in your life. Because meaningful connection isn't built on performance, it's built on recognition. Two people seeing each other clearly enough to stop pretending. And before that recognition happens with another person, it often has to happen within yourself first. That quiet season, the one that feels lonely sometimes, the one that feels confusing, may actually be preparing you for something your past self wouldn't have known how to receive. And then something even stranger starts to happen. The things you once thought were absolutely essential begin losing their grip on you. Not overnight, not dramatically, just little by little. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop obsessing over every unanswered message. You stop measuring your worth through someone else's attention. And if you've ever gone through this shift, you know how unsettling it can feel. Because for a long time, those habits felt normal. You thought that was attraction. You thought that was investment. You thought that was what caring looked like. But now something feels different. You're no longer willing to abandon yourself just to keep someone interested. And that's when the fourth sign often appears. You become less attached to outcomes. Now be careful with that sentence. I don't mean you stop caring. You still care. You still hope. You still want meaningful things. But you stop gripping them so tightly. There's a quiet confidence that begins emerging. A confidence that doesn't come from certainty. It comes from self-respect. And self-respect changes everything. Because when a man truly respects himself, he stops negotiating against his own emotional well-being. He stops chasing people who consistently make him question his value. He stops shrinking his personality to fit someone else's preferences. He stops pretending to be unaffected by things that genuinely matter to him. For many men, this is one of the most important turning points of their lives. Because until this point, they often believe connection requires sacrifice. Not healthy sacrifice, self-abandonment, the sacrifice of honesty, the sacrifice of boundaries, the sacrifice of authenticity. And the problem is, relationships built on self-abandonment always create a debt. Sooner or later, someone has to pay it, usually with resentment, with exhaustion, with the painful realization that they've spent years being loved for a version of themselves that wasn't entirely real. But something changes when you begin valuing your own inner life. You become harder to impress and easier to connect with. That sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But it's true. You become harder to impress because appearances alone no longer move you. Charm alone no longer moves you. Potential alone no longer moves you. You start paying attention to consistency, character, emotional maturity, the way someone treats people when there's nothing to gain. At the same time, you become easier to connect with because you're no longer hiding behind performances. You don't need to seem perfect. You don't need to seem invulnerable. You don't need to win every interaction. You're simply present, and presence is surprisingly rare. Most people are trapped in their fears, their projections, their assumptions, their past experiences. They're not actually meeting the person in front of them, they're meeting a story they've already written. But when you've done enough inner work, when you've spent enough time confronting yourself, you begin seeing people more clearly. And that's important because meaningful connections often arrive looking different than expected. The person who truly understands you may not fit the image you've carried in your mind for years. The connection that changes your life may begin quietly rather than dramatically. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that life-changing relationships announce themselves immediately. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they enter your life softly, a conversation, a shared moment, an unexpected sense of ease. Nothing explosive, nothing cinematic, just an unusual feeling, the feeling that you don't have to work so hard to be understood. And if you've spent years feeling misunderstood, that feeling can be almost disorienting because suddenly you're not managing impressions. You're not calculating every word. You're not wondering whether you're enough. You're simply existing. And somehow, that's enough. That's when many people realize something profound. The strongest connections often don't make you feel more anxious. They make you feel more like yourself. And before two souls finally recognize each other, both are often learning how to return to themselves first. And finally, the fifth thing. The one that most people only understand when they look back years later. A sense of timing begins to reveal itself. Not perfect timing, not magical timing, human timing. The kind that only makes sense in hindsight. Because when you're living through it, it often feels messy, confusing, incomplete. You meet someone and think, why now? Or you think about someone you never met and wonder, where were they 5 years ago? But that's the interesting part. 5 years ago, maybe you wouldn't have recognized each other. Maybe you would have walked right past each other. Maybe you would have repeated old patterns. Maybe you would have mistaken each other for something you weren't. We like to imagine that meaningful people are simply waiting somewhere, frozen in time until we arrive. But real life doesn't work that way. People are changing, learning, healing, making mistakes, growing through experiences they never planned to have. The man you are today is not the man you were 3 years ago. If you're honest, he's probably not even the same man you were 12 months ago. You've lost things, learned things, survived things. You've carried disappointments that reshaped you. You've had hopes collapse and new ones quietly take their place. All of it mattered. Even the parts you wish never happened, especially those parts. Because meaningful connections are rarely about finding someone who completes you. I know that's a popular idea. It's romantic, it's comforting. But psychologically, something deeper is happening. The most powerful relationships don't complete you. They reveal parts of you that were waiting to be expressed. They create conditions where more of your authentic self can emerge. And that's a very different thing. Because it means your value was never missing, your worth was never absent. The connection simply helped illuminate what was already there. I want you to think about something tonight. Maybe the person you're meant to meet isn't the only one moving toward that future moment. maybe you are too. Every difficult conversation, every disappointment, every lesson you didn't want, every season of loneliness, every time you chose growth over comfort, it all shaped the version of you that will eventually stand in front of that person. And perhaps that's why certain encounters feel so significant. Not because they appear out of nowhere, but because both people unknowingly spent years becoming capable of recognizing each other. There's a quiet beauty in that. Not destiny in the dramatic sense, not certainty, not guarantees. Just the understanding that human lives intersect in meaningful ways when growth, readiness, and openness finally meet. And maybe that's why the signs we've talked about matter. The restlessness, the letting go, the self-confrontation, the return to self-respect, the shift in timing. Individually, they don't seem extraordinary. Together, they tell a story about transformation. Because before two souls are truly able to meet, they often spend a long time becoming more honest, more aware, more grounded, more themselves. And if you're in that uncomfortable space right now, the space between who you were and who you're becoming, don't rush through it, don't numb it, don't treat it like a mistake. Listen to it. There is wisdom in that discomfort. There is information in that longing. There is growth in that uncertainty. And one day, perhaps much sooner than you think, you'll look back at this season and realize something that seems impossible to see right now. You weren't being delayed. You weren't being forgotten. You were becoming the person who could finally recognize what truly belongs in your life when it arrives. And sometimes, that changes everything. If this conversation spoke to something you've been feeling but couldn't quite put into words, let me know in the comments. Not with a long explanation, just one word: becoming. Because sometimes a single word says more than an entire story, and sometimes it's the first honest thing we've said to ourselves in a very long time.